Well, good evening and good afternoon for those on the West Coast. I'm Shauna Sherman with the San Francisco Public Library's African American Center. Welcome to our conversation on Black joy and resistance with photographer Adreinne Waheed and poet Staceyann Chin. First, I'd like to start with acknowledging that the San Francisco Public Library is broadcasting from the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities to this land, as well as for all the people who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working in their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. Information on the San Francisco American Indian Cultural District will be available in the chat, as well as information on what native lands you may reside on. It must be said that the library also stands with the Black Lives Matter movement and supports all efforts to end inequality and structural, systematic, and institutional racism in our institutions and in our communities. Find out how the library is working toward racial equity at sfpl.org in the About section. It's February, so happy Black History Month, which here at the San Francisco Public Library we call More Than a Month. Our celebration officially starts on the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday and runs through February, but we center Black voices all year round. Thank you to the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library for supporting our programs. I'm going to go through a few that are coming up. You can find more information at sfpl.org, More Than a Month. Our On the Same Page selection this January and February is The Old Drift, a novel by Namwali Serpell. Find it in our catalog. Please support our local bookstores. Marcus Books is the nation's oldest Black-owned independent bookstore and still operating in Oakland. On February 12th, author James Dale and Maya R. Cummings will be talking about the book We're Better Than This, My Fight for the Future of Our Democracy by the late Elijah J. Cummings. That's February 12th at noon. On February 17th, author Melissa Valentine will be in conversation with Amber Butts. Her book is called The Names of All the Flowers. And on February 20th at 11 a.m., we have a presentation by Jan Batiste Adkins on African Americans in San Francisco. Now on to our program. Today we're going to start with a conversation between longtime friends Adreinne and Staceyann, and then there'll be a short time for questions and answers at the end of the program. Please put questions in the chat on Zoom or in the Q&A section, and also in the chat on YouTube if you're viewing it from there. Before we get started, I'll give a brief introduction to both of our guests. On the screen now is Adreinne Waheed. She is a visual artist based in Brooklyn, New York and Berkeley, California. Her work bears witness to and holds space for the beauty, brilliance, and resilience of Black folks across the diaspora. Waheed is an accomplished photo editor who during her 20-year career has researched, produced, and directed numerous shoots for publications including Vibe, King, and Essence magazines. Her photography has been published by the New York Times, National Geographic, Photo District News, and The Fader. Waheed's work also appears in the inaugural issue of MFON, a journal of women photographers of the African diaspora. She has exhibited at Rush Arts, Corridor Gallery, the Underground Museum, the Long Gallery, and Betty Ono Gallery. In 2010, she created the Waheed Photo Archive, a collection of found photographs of African Americans from the Civil War to the present. The Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture acquired the archive in 2015. Her self-published coffee table book, of which you see a picture here, entitled Black Joy and Resistance, was released in December 2018 and is available from her website. Staceyann Chin is the recipient of the 2007 Power of the Voice Award from the Human Rights Campaign, the 2008 Safe Haven Award from Immigration Equality, the 2008 honors from the Lesbian AIDS Project, the 2009 New York State Senate Award, the 2013 American Heritage Award from American Immigration Council, and the 2016 Planned Parenthood Excellence in Media Award. Chin is also a 2017 LGBTQ Humanist Award recipient. She unapologetically identifies as a Caribbean and Black, Asian and lesbian, woman and resident of New York City. A proud Jamaican National, Chin's voice was featured on the Oprah Winfrey Show, where she spoke candidly about her experiences of growing up on the island and the dire consequences of her coming out there. Widely known as co-writer and original performer in the Tony Award-winning Russell Simmons Def Poetry Jam on Broadway, her poetry has seen the rousing cheers of the Nuyorican Poets Café, one-woman shows off-Broadway, writing workshops in Sweden, South Africa, and Australia. Chin's three-woman shows, Hands of Fire, Unspeakable Things, and Border Clash, all open to rave reviews at the Culture Project in New York City. Chin is the author of the memoir, The Other Side of Paradise, and is currently touring MotherStruck, her critically acclaimed solo theater piece directed by Cynthia Nixon and produced by Rosie O'Donnell, chronicling her incredible experiences about motherhood, which opened in New York in December 2015. The most recent publication, Crossfire, A Litany For Survival, is the first full-length collection of Chin's poetry. She is currently touring and sharing poems from Crossfire, be it on 60 Minutes, in the New York Times, or the UK Guardian. She has a reputation for telling it exactly like it is. We're so looking forward to this conversation between longtime friends Adreinne Waheed and Staceyann Chin. Please welcome them to the virtual stage.
Hello. So is it my turn to speak now?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm really excited about this program. I want to thank Shauna and Anissa and the folks at the San Francisco Public Library for having us. And I want to thank my friend Staceyann for joining me in this conversation. So it's Black History Month, although we celebrate all year. And as some of you may know, my book, Black Joy and Resistance, came out at the end of 2018. And when I put the book together, little did I know that it would be so relevant right now, the themes around Black joy as resistance, Black joy and resistance. And so I'm really thrilled to be able to talk about this with you all and to share some images. Now, the book, which is 2 years old now, I've decided to share images that I've shot recently through the 2020 protests that happened, through George Floyd protests, the Black Lives Matter protests. And so I decided to show you images that are not in the book, most of them, and are never before seen, but I just felt like those are relevant to what's going on right now, but also still keeping in the theme of Black joy and resistance. So I'm excited about it and excited to have a conversation with you, Staceyann. And so I think what we'll do is just start off with some images. Is that good? Okay. So what I want to do is just start off here. Share my screen. All right. So this image was shot in July of 2020. And, this was the Show Up for Black Women vigil, candlelight vigil in front of the Brooklyn Museum. And what I want to start off by saying is just that, everyone is experiencing these unprecedented times with COVID, and with the killings of, continued police brutality and murders, state-sanctioned violence that has been, perpetrated on Black bodies, continuously. And in 2020, the pandemic, and the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, sort of like this storm, this perfect storm that pushed so many people out into the streets. And it literally pushed me out into the streets and out of quarantine because I had to lift my voice, and I had to do something. I was feeling helpless, I was feeling enraged, and I just needed to go out into the streets, both to document what was going on and to also raise my voice in protest. So this particular image is one of my favorites, which, it's a quiet moment, but it's a moment where we were having a moment of silence for the women that have been murdered by state-sanctioned violence. This was a rally that was attended by the mother of Eric Garner, Gwen Carr. And so we had a moment of silence. This image depicts the moment of silence that we were having for Erica Garner, her granddaughter, and all of the women that have lost their lives. And so what I love about it is just the quiet moment and how this Black woman is illuminated in this moment. And I just love it. And as Staceyann and I were talking earlier, and you were saying that, there was joy in the moment for you. There was joy in this image. And so, maybe you have any thoughts about it? You want to speak about it?
For sure. I was listening to you saying that there's a way that you're looking at the images and you were a little bit unsure about whether you should put images that were maybe more traditionally received as joyful.
Right.
And I looked at those pictures and I thought I had the same thought. And then I said, no, Black joy can also be quiet. Like there is a way that Black people, and particularly Black women, in order to be noticed, in order to be lauded, in order to be lifted up, in order to be celebrated, that there's a very narrow lane for performance for us, where we must be wide open, throats back and screaming, where we have to be, dancing, and like everything about us has to be larger than life in order to be noticed. And what I loved about the image was how quietly graceful it was, how she was shielding that flame in the way that Black women often do, that we put our bodies or our hands around a thing that seems vulnerable and protected, from the historical stereotype of the nannies, these Black women who run from place to place, minding the babies of white women all over New York City, to our very mothers who stand between us and a world that is so brutal to us. That flame made me think of us and our babies and all the babies we protect all the time, and the secrets we protect, and the joy we have to kind of, when if you're holding a flame in the wind, in the wintry wind, in the summer wind, it takes so much delicate grace to protect it, because if you do something else to it, you might hurt it.
Right. And that's us. We protect everyone else. We show up for everyone else. And so we, you know, as you were saying in the conversation earlier also, we need folks to show up for us in the same way that we show up for everyone else. And so,
and those marches that you documented, Adreinne, those marches are, you know, are a testament, and your photographs are a recording, a kind of historical document of Black women standing up and saying, no mas, no more.
we would be marching underneath this flag, you know, that still has not protected us. And we're still demanding for that protection under that flag, just as citizens, just as, you know. So,
I often wonder sometimes when I think about all the stories and all the ways in which Black women, Black girls, Black trans women continue to survive, you know, not just to survive, but continue to be like a broad back for everyone's use to step up, to stand on. I wonder all the time, like, where do we get the fortitude to keep coming? Because every election that we get it right, Black women are at the forefront of that.
exactly.
Every time we talk about, you know, who's leading, you know, any kind of radical progressive movement in any form, there's always Black women at the forefront of that. You know, and I can't recall any movement, any rally, any march that I've been to that Black women have not been integral in the planning and execution of such a thing.
Right. And this movement has been no different. And that's why I wanted to highlight Black women and trans women in this particular program, because I just feel like we don't get enough shine. We never do. And being out there in those streets, I went to over 40 protests, and what I was inspired by was the young Black women who were leading this movement, you know, and so that's why I'm highlighting the Black women leading this movement here in this program today, because I just feel like we deserve to get our shine.
And you know, these photographs, you know, the kind of body of work that, you know, so centers the Black body, really reminds me of the textual work of writers like June Jordan, like Audre Lorde, who at a time when no one else seemed to be making it central, Black women's identities were at the center of, you know, how they would write a blueprint for the future.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And
The next one, the next slide is kind of, you know, the two characters, you know, the kind of like, there's 3 yellow headbands in it.
yes.
You know, but one party's looking mad militant in the middle, and this, you know, I just love how this Black woman is screaming rage, but like hella fashionable with her pink hair. Just fly and fierce.
Yes, so this was that same march, you know, further along on the bridge, but you can see the feeling. The feeling there is just palpable. You can see the rage. You can see, you know, her pain. And I remember just being on that bridge that day, and it was being led by a group of young women called the Freedom March NYC. Amazing women under 25 who led this march and led many marches throughout the summer, and are still doing the work right now. But I love the image, and we were singing, we were chanting, but the idea was that we, as Black folks, are dealing with 2 pandemics. And so right before this image was taken, there was a time where we sat down on that bridge, and a young woman spoke, Chelsea Miller. She spoke about having to deal with 2 pandemics at the same time, being racism as well as COVID-19. And so, that's real. And so that's really, what was happening here in this moment. And I just feel like the image really captured the feelings of rage, at least the feelings that I was feeling, and obviously this woman here was feeling.
I'm cheating and scrolling ahead, and we can't talk about any of this with Black women without talking about the ways in which the Black Lives Matter movement started, spearheaded by a trio of Black women. Yes. And how in the last 10 years there has been nothing that has been as sustained or as forceful as the Black Lives Matter movement, created by, led by, and perpetrated by Black women, and how it is that that such a successful, amazingly necessary movement has been, the past administration had these women marked for terrorism, and the Black Lives Matter, it almost reminded me of what happened with the Black Panther movement. Absolutely. Years ago. Like every time you see Black people rising up, when Black women are minding their babies and keeping white babies alive, when we are washing clothes, when we are sweeping, when we are teaching in schools, when we allow our bodies to be used as rungs on a ladder for everyone else. No one notices us, no one talks about it, but as soon as we say, okay, our time now, we are terrorists and ought to be locked up. And he's just,
that gets me so angry, and that's why I have to just embody Black joy as a active practice, as a means of self-care, because otherwise I would just be so enraged, because you see the double standard right in front of you,
and every day when I think about, you and I, we have all kinds of, oh my God, the house is leaking. Oh my God, I can't find this contractor. Oh my God, my girlfriend done left me. Oh my God, I think I'm going to leave this girlfriend. Like whatever the conversations have been over these last 20 years, there's always the deep yearning for joy and the space to be joyful outside of these unforgiving gazes driven by white supremacy.
Sure.
It's so
ourselves. We create that joy. That joy is created at your house parties pre-COVID.
But we have to.
And yes, we have to. Actually, as a means of survival, we have to.
Mm-hmm. Because the terror of being alive in these times is, but you can't be doing the work that is portrayed in these photographs. And you can't be like dancing to, like singing at the top of our voices, I'm not your superwoman in a Brooklyn apartment. You need to be singing, I'm not your superwoman. I'm not the kind of girl you can let down and think that everything's okay. We got to sing that loud and in unison when juxtapositioned against the way these images are set up. The pain in this woman's face when she's like, listen, we got to do this. We got to be out here in this march. Pandemic or no pandemic, we got to be out here.
Exactly. It's a matter of life and death.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The same energy, but the next photograph has this kind of like joyful rage, almost like these characters are like, yeah, we fighting, but we know we on the right side, so we dancing, we singing, we screaming. Why we fighting?
Exactly. These sisters, this is where we were coming over the Brooklyn Bridge, and these sisters were leading the song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. So as when I took this photo, this was in the midst of these sisters leading the charge of Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And you can see, from the signs, get your knee off my neck in the background, and this sister with her t-shirt, it says, we march, you mad. We sit down, you mad, we die, you're silent, and so that tells you everything right there. So, you have that rage, that frustration, that pain that is seen on their faces. But you also have this joy that's embodied that you'll see in the next slide, which is why I included this next slide here, is because, you know, you see the sister in the background, you know, she got that face like yes.
She in church.
Yes, exactly.
She's communing with God.
Tell it, say that, you know, and that's for real. And that's Black folks, that's Black joy right there in the face of resistance, while we are fighting for justice. And that's, you know.
And I cannot, because I am Black and because I'm usually at the bottom of the fashion pile, I just have to lift it up to these Black women. I'm scrolling back a little bit and everybody's hair is on point. Everybody's coloring. Everybody's got the fade. It's just like ill. It's just really, really, really ill, you know?
We do. You know, we're going to protest. We're going to protest in style. You know, we're going to have those masks with all the design and t-shirts and all that, you know? And that's that joy I think that we embody just as a people.
Yeah, I want to ask you, when you're going through and you're choosing images to share with other people, do you ever like hit a photograph of like a white person and you think that it's like relevant, but you are like, I ain't gonna give you no more space? Or do you feel like this is an important part of the story? Like, how do you navigate? Because I know you shoot mad white people in those marches.
That's an interesting question, because yes, I've shot many white people at these protests. And, you know, I will say from being out there that it was refreshing to see our white allies out there, you know, because not always, but a lot of times they're coming from a place of privilege. And what I appreciated was that they understood that and they were out there to give their assistance in any way they could, you know, whether it was putting their bodies on the line or stations set up with snacks and hand sanitizers. And so, you know, what I appreciated about the movement this summer was the white allies and how they were showing up. And that was really inspiring. Now, of course, I shot many of them. And there will be a place for those images in the larger body of work. But yes, you know, you're right. I always tend to lean towards showing images of my Black folks, my beautiful Black folks. And so, I mean, I don't know. I guess that is the imagery of our folks is kind of what inspires me the most. And so that's what I like to share. But the whole story and the whole picture of what happened this summer does include our white allies. And, you know, I have shared some of those as well.
The next slide, the woman with the bullhorn, with the speaker. Tell me about her. She looked mad. She looked mad focused.
This was on June 4th, 2020, and this is Chelsea Miller. And, you know, Chelsea is an amazing, you know, activist, youth activist. Her and Naila, her friend Naila, they started the Freedom March NYC activist group. And they were one of the several groups that I followed over the summer. And so this was taken in Washington Square Park after we had, you know, marched from Brooklyn, you know, into the city, into Manhattan, and into Washington Square Park. What I loved about the movement was that there were certain places where you knew that if you go there, that's where the protest was going to happen. So there were, you know, basically designated spots where you know you could go and you could gather with like-minded people, and you knew that the protest was going to happen. The protest was jumping off the march. And so this image of her is one of my favorites, because, you know, you see her leading the chant, and you see the crowd in the background with their fists raised. And it just kind of, for me, shows the strength of our young Black women out there. And it's inspiring, because, you know, this is our future. You know, this woman is under 25, and she's, you know, her and her friends are super motivated to, you know, just change things, just push. We have to keep pushing. And we need our youth to be able to do that, you know? I mean, I'm getting old, so I had to, you know, to rest my bones sometimes. But, you know, it's encouraging to know that these young Black women got it, you know? They have us.
You know, when you talk about, you just segued me into the next question nicely. When there's a way that that the old heads, you know, and, you know, we're not quite old heads yet, but we're heading there.
Right.
You know, I remember it being like a really hard push to get a lot of the kind of established voices to make room for the young voices we were. And not just with regards to youth, but Black, you know, what some people call cis women. I know lots of Black women who are, you know, who resist the term cis. So I say it, you know, in an effort to speak to a group of women who occupy a particular identity space, but also with some understanding that there are lots of Black women who resist the word cis. So and as we move into the next image, I think the image is of a trans woman.
Yes.
And so the transition of making space for other voices and voices that are traditionally marginalized or silenced. And here in your work, you are, how it is that you include, there's a, between Hilaria Baldwin, or Ilaria Baldwin, and the Rachel Dolezals of the world, and there's a really fine line, the Kim Kardashians, there's a fine line between between appreciation, appropriation, and celebration of a culture that is not your own, or a body that is not your own. So how is it that when you choose like to present an image of a trans woman who is of course, in ownership of her own body and her own image, but you have to make the call to include all different kinds of women and Black women? How is it that you kind of come to the place where you're like, this image is an image I'm going to present?
Well, I would say that just being out there and experiencing the movement as a whole, and when I say the movement, I just, from June through December, just being out there in the streets with these women, I learned a lot. And this woman here, trans woman here, Queen Jean, was one of the leaders of the marches there. And so after following her, there was no way that I could not include her. She helped me realize the importance of inclusion, including trans women in the conversation, and being very intentional about including them in the conversation. So when I decided, okay, I want to highlight Black women, it was there was no second thoughts about, absolutely, I have to include Queen Jean, because, the fight for trans liberation, which is what she talks about, you know, that's part of the fight for all of Black liberation.
Mm.
You
And
know,
talk about Black joy, even in this struggle, to speak about her right to be included, her right to be, you know, to be documented as a part of, you know, the Black women's progressive movement, or all of our or all of the fights we win. I kind of love the way that, first of all, I can't not mention the fashion there, because all of that, and I think
yes,
I think all of what's tied up in the head wrap is also matched by the mask that is pulled down under the chin.
yes,
Fitted body, and then the kind of locket around the neck. You know, on my best dressed day, I'm not this well dressed. But there's also like there's also like a kind of uprightness to the back, and a kind of beautiful grace. Like, she's quite beautiful. I mean, if you enlarge the photograph, I mean, the skin, the eyes, you know, there's a way that that I can't help but wonder what she's saying in the photograph. Like, I wish I had been there to hear it, because that's the moment that it seemed so much like whatever she was saying was something I should be hearing.
Well,
you know,
that's a compliment. That means that the photo, that's a good photograph. This was Marsha P. Johnson's birthday. Marsha P. Johnson birthday rally on August 24th at Washington Square Park. And so I believe she was speaking about Marsha and the strides that she made, the barriers she broke down, and how she led the way. Marsha P. Johnson led the way for trans women like Queen Jean to come along, and how she's carrying on that torch to, you know, Black trans liberation, because that's what she's about, you know, and, you know, liberation for her sisters and her brothers. And that's part of what her mantra is. So I find, you know, her to be very inspiring, and, you know, happy to have been able to follow her through the streets, you know, demanding justice.
The arch behind her.
That's Washington Square Park.
Yes, there's something kind of beautiful about it, and very much present in almost all the photographs. There's so much context, you know, even as Queen Jean is foregrounded and in full focus, and the rest of it is very soft. Like, the context is very much there. Like, even the photograph that follows, you know, there's a way that I'm drawn to the central character, or the central, you know, framed person who is there. And of course, I enlarge so I can see what the photographs, what the sign is saying. And there's a kind of power to it, as in, you know, we don't want your apologies, we want action, no justice, no peace. But then, you know, inside of the moment, there are these two women who hands are raised, and all the hands are raised in a kind of we are with you and we support you, and almost like, you know, the way that background singers, you know, support the lead singer. That photograph gives me that sense of it.
Yeah, this was the Take Back March. No more stolen lives and looted dreams. And so, you know, I love all the names of these marches. You know, they all had a name, they all had a theme, and it was all just, you know, blackety black, and it was so necessary. But this was also at Union Square Park, and, you know, these three women are just part of the crowd that was there, but I just love, you know, their energy, their expression. The woman to the far right, I mean, even though she has a mask on, you can kind of see in her furrowed brow and her eyes that, you know, she's upset. She's, you know,
I mean,
she's
these photographs could be paintings in that someone went ahead and like positioned these bodies and brushstroke by brushstroke created the emotion in it, you know?
well, yeah, well, that I guess that is my challenge as a photographer, to be able to capture those moments in a way that will allow you to feel what I was feeling.
And if you skip ahead to the next one, the flag behind this body is almost an extension of what feels like she's dancing.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
yeah, it's almost like you know, a continuation of her body.
Yeah, and I mean it almost is, you know. This is Drea, a Black trans woman, and this was the Stonewall March and rally in the city, in New York City. And you know, Drea was just a wonderful person and great energy. And I probably marched for hours, but you know, she and I had a real connection, because you know, when you're a photographer in these things, it's like this dance you have to do between capturing the moment and experiencing the moment, and also not impeding on someone else's sort of space, you know, and comfort zone. And so she and I got a vibe, and, you know, we danced a little bit down the street. You know, I took many pictures of her, and it was, and she was just amazing. And so I love the energy in this image. I love the pants remind me of like those Michael Jackson pants from, what was that video? Maybe
The Disco Inferno era.
the video, I think it was Rock. I don't know which, Disco Inferno. I think it was like Rock With You or something. But
no, but what I'm saying is that this image also almost pays homage to that, the 1970s, when people were in like this shiny disco arena. But those eyes are so arresting. Like, you know, how did you catch so much in this one moment? Every time I pull away, you know, and even the woman out of focus behind her in the heels, yes, and the ball gown that says, I am actually going to a grand ball tonight and not at a protest, you know?
Exactly. Yes. And that's, you know, the Stonewall protests happened every Thursday throughout the summer, and they were always just a party, you know. We would block, you know, New York City streets, just block an intersection off and do like a fashion show type of thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing, because it's just Black bodies taking up space, you know, and demanding to be heard. And so this image just, I hope, kind of conveys a little bit of that.
For sure. And the next photograph, am I mistaken? I mean, am I one of those white people who don't know the difference between Black people? Is that Queen Jean again?
That is Queen Jean again, yes.
And I love that it's a different moment. This one is the other one was like, I'm gonna put on my well-dressed outfit. I'm gonna speak to you all nice and soothing. I'm gonna tell you what it is. But this image is like straight up like, yo.
This is when we took over the FDR. You know, for those out there that might not know, the FDR is a major freeway in New York. And this is when we just stormed the freeway. And I love this image right here, because it just, well, first of all, the light on these women is just wonderful, and that beautiful Black skin. And we can look so good while we're protesting, you know, and I just love the feeling of this. And so
this is a really like nerdy techie question, but how is it that when you photograph all these like ranges of Black skin tones in one photograph, you can make all of them look beautiful, but when you see other people photograph Black people, it's like, I don't know what happened to the light.
Well, it's a matter of knowing your light. You know, you have to know your lighting, know what Black skin needs in terms of your apertures in your camera settings. And I guess I've just been doing it for so long that it comes as second nature to me. You know,
so photographing Black people requires a certain kind of knowledge about, like, do you think like anybody can do it?
Well, I mean, I don't know if anybody can anybody can attempt to photograph Black people, but not everybody is going to be able to capture them in their fullness, you know? And so I just think that it's perhaps shooting Black folks is a sort of a slightly different aesthetic than maybe shooting folks that are non-melanated.
Yeah, you're being very politically correct here. I'm talking about all them white photographers that make like all these Black women look strange. Like all of these different tones of Black women, some of them light, some of them cream, some of them, you know, peachy, some of them chocolate, milk chocolate, dark chocolate, some of them ebony black. And
Yeah.
all of them look so beautiful, like skin so beautiful. Like, how is it
how to light them? You have to know how
but in these photographs, you're not lighting them. You're not putting light on them. You are capturing
them, but at the same time, I know my light. So like, I'm not lighting them with any artificial lighting, but I'm using the sun's light in the way that I want to, in using the sun and my camera settings to manipulate the amount of light that's going to come into my photograph. So like, you know, back in the day when there were when film cameras were a thing, Black photographers would gravitate towards Fujifilm because Fuji had the type of colors and tones that looked good on Black skin. Whereas Kodak had more blue tones in their film that didn't look as good and made Black folks look a little bit more like ashy or flat, and their skin didn't really pop. But Fuji had those red, magenta tones that allowed for a Black skin to really sort of glow and pop. But now, you know, it's digital, but in my mind, it's still similar. Just, I guess, it's just second nature for me. And, you know, I
love it. I kind of love, you talk about complexion, like this woman's complexion in the next photograph is like amazing. And I love the juxtaposition of, you know, I think it's like T-Mobile and Old Navy and Gap, like all of those corporate signs in the back with all of these women who are protesting and calling for a more grassroots response to change and visibility.
Yes. This was the March for Jacob Blake, you know. This was the day or 2 days after he was shot in the back, 7 or 8 times at point blank range. Folks were angry, you know. It's like, we've been marching all summer and y'all gonna go shoot this man in the back, you know. And this sister here, Phoenix Robles, she's also a photographer. And so she'd been on the other side of the camera with me on several protests, shooting, capturing the moment, telling our stories. But she also, you know, is an activist in her own right. And so this particular day, she put that hat on and was leading the march through Times Square. And so
I just want to say how beautiful it is how amazingly beautiful it is to see sisterhood in action, not just in the photograph, in the way that these marches, but in the way that it's almost giving a silent nod and a tip to another Black photographer, Black woman photographer. It like warms me from like tip to toes. That just made me smile all over and think like, my goodness, is there a better example of how we should be with each other?
Absolutely. You know? Yes, we should. I mean, you know, just being out there, there were a lot of photographers, okay? And, you know, there were Black photographers, there were a lot of white photographers. And, you know, I can't speak to, I don't know everyone's intention for being out there, but there were some white male photographers who were being white men, taking up too much space, not being considerate of folks around them, you know, not respecting the space or the moment, just there. I mean, I'm imagining just to get an image for the Associated Press or whomever. And so when you sort of have that, almost like a battle line or something where you have to like jockey for a position to document a movement that's about your own people, it's difficult. And you know, in those times, I guess alliances are made, camaraderie is had. You know, there might have been moments where this sister right here and I gave each other a look like, oh boy, here they go, you know? And so in those moments, like, you know, you have to look around and see who's for you and who's not. And and so, you know, yes, that's why it's very important for me to big up other image makers, photographers that were Black women that were out there doing their thing. Because,
I'm listening to you. I'm listening to you talk about, you know, the various hats you wear and the various hats women in the marches, in the rallies might have to wear, and the various spaces people take up. And in the next photograph, my brain can't seem to make up its mind about what the women are doing. Are they at a hip hop concert? Are they at a reggae show? Or are they at a protest? There's something remarkably beautiful about this. And I think maybe I want a print of this in my house because there's something wonderful about it, you know, where the stance, I mean, they could be like singing some Biggie Small lyrics and be like, yo, 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 you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's gonna be your housewarming gift. Actually, this image is one of the, I think the only one in this presentation that's actually in my book, Black Joy and Resistance. This was in Johannesburg in 2015. I was in Johannesburg really on vacation, and I heard that there's this protest going on, that the students had marched out of their classrooms and they were protesting the raising of the tuition and fees, and just marched out across Johannesburg, across South Africa, not just Johannesburg, but also in Cape Town and Durban. And so I had to join them, you know, and so I joined the protest. I marched with them for hours and miles. And this was down in Braamfontein in Johannesburg. It's kind of like a downtown area. And these women were chanting.
Braamfontein, yes.
Yes. And these women were basically chanting down the establishment. They were calling for the university president to resign, and they were calling for him to either come down and negotiate with the students or resign. And so I included this image because it's like across the diaspora, you have Black women, you know, raising their voice, you know, fighting for what they believe in, just strong Black women. And, like you said, they could have been at a concert, but that's because our joy and our resistance so oftentimes come like hand in hand.
Mirror images of each other.
Exactly. And during this,
and even the next one, when you move to the next one, that calls to mind that, do you remember at the Olympics where the three men raised the positioning of it?
Yes,
like one
in the 60s where they raised their, yes, I see that. Yeah, I see that now. This one was basically in front of Lafayette Park, which is the park right before the White House. And after Trump did his little photo stunt where he had the peaceful protesters tear gas so he could come take the picture in front of that church. After that area became an encampment for Black Lives Matter protesters. They were holding that space down. The mayor of DC had the Black Lives Matter painted on the ground, and then it became Black Lives Matter Plaza. So this image was taken actually in August 28th or 27th, the night before the big commitment march on Washington with Al Sharpton and everyone else. But what I love about this image is, the sister in her mask, which says Africa is not a test lab. And I just feel like it goes really well with the image before, because that was actually in Johannesburg. And now we have this woman here in DC who's saying Africa is not a test lab. And it just kind of goes to show you sort of like the Pan-African mindset. And when we talk about now we're in COVID times and, we have this vaccine and, of course, a lot of the Black community is skeptical and doesn't trust the vaccine or trust our healthcare system for good reason. And so her mask, it just kind of speaks a little bit to that, and yeah, I love the flag in the background and just kind of just the energy of it. I think
that the next book should just be a book about images of Black women. Well, yeah. I think you should do that. I think we would love that, and that's necessary. And I've never seen that come from like one of us. There's a kind of power, like, when you talk about the power of the body, there's a way that, we could post 100 different posts about the world, like change that, move that, I post things online all the time and people tell you how beautifully moving it is, blah, blah, blah. But there's something about the flesh being present that like a photograph captures. When I look at, I'm like, there's a way that I kind of speed through the images back and forth as I'm talking to you. And you can see the sinew, the muscle, the backs, the tattoos, the sweat, the mouths open, the eyes. Like there's a kind of carnality to what you've documented that, like no matter how many times you post it online, there's something about the still photograph, in an age when everyone wants to see the moving image, in an age when everyone only wants to see these funny videos that are, curated for like 2 minutes, you just watch them while you don't want to do your work at your desk. But there's something beautiful about these very still high-res images that bring you, that you can go close up, you can almost smell these bodies, you can almost reach out and touch them, how flesh they are, how present, like, in a way that, our present preoccupation with filters don't allow us to experience the body, and the body, when we're talking about the killing of Black bodies and all of these beautiful photographs that you've made of Black bodies in protest. It's really quite affirming, and like it makes me proud to be associated with this time, you know, this time in history that they can't say we weren't here because photographers like you documented it.
Right. Yes. I think that is one of the importance of the still image, you know, because you have to pause, you know, you have to pause and take it all in. And if it's a good photograph, then you're not only going to see it, but you're also going to feel it, you know. And that, as a photojournalist, that is one of my sort of missions, is to create images that people feel, you know, and to convey sort of what I'm feeling and seeing, to be able to convey that to everyone, you know.
The very last photograph here, is it the last one?
No, I think this is the second to the last one.
Okay. You know, this is the one that made me talk about the flesh and the muscle, because if you, all the names there is very interesting. The Breonna Taylor, it's, you know, kind of striking with the Afro pick. But if you widen, if you really open the photograph, if you really look at it, you can see every muscle in this woman's back.
Yes, and you can see the sheen on her skin.
Yes, she's wet. Her arms are wet from sweating.
Yes, exactly, and it's sort of it reminds me of just the sort of the toil, just that we have to like push through sometimes.
The work of it, yeah.
You know, just the fight, the push to get to a place where we are fully recognized for all that we are. You know, we shouldn't have to fight to be recognized as full human beings.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't have to fight for our sisters and brothers not to be murdered and, you know, proclaimed guilty before innocence. Like the weight of all of that, I feel that in this photograph.
Mm-hmm. The very last one has moved me. I can't even tell you what to. This woman is fresh off her tattoo.
Yes. Yes.
Like the tattoo, she still got the plastic over her tattoo, meaning it ain't dry yet.
It's not dry yet. Nope.
And she out with this hand in the streets.
Right. What strikes me about the image and why I included it, well, there's so many things going on here, but first, you know, her mask, which says I am Black history, you know, and we are Black history. We're making Black history right now. Every day we're making Black history. And it's also her eyes, you know, because even though she has a mask on, you can see it in her eyes that she's you know, frustrated, she's fed up, she's tired, she's you know, the what I see in her eyes just connects to what I was feeling when I was out there in the street.
Yeah, because you said, you know, I mean, Malcolm X said by any means necessary. You said quarantine or no, I gotta get out of quarantine to go take these pictures. And she said, I just got this tattoo and I really want to go home and just lay down in my house, but I gotta be out here.
Right, with her Black Pan-African flag waving.
And the other one, the one before had the Black Pan-African flag.
Yes.
Just stuck in her backpack or something. I mean, because it's just stuck there.
Yes. Yep. You're gonna see me coming and going. All of my Black.
These images, man, I keep, you know, there's something beautiful about kind of just scrolling through them, you know, like if you just allow yourself to go back and forth between them, it's almost like this crazy movie about do you know what I mean? Like, it's a crazy movie about the movement and about Black women's strength and about Black women's fight and about Black women's ability to stay in a fight.
Absolutely.
It's just fly.
And there's 100,000 more images where these came from. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we only have one time. I mean, I don't know what the time is, but I think we have time for one poem. Is there anyone who knows better than Adreinne or I who want to just say what we should be doing? Because we've been having such a great time chatting in here. I haven't been keeping track of the time.
Right.
You have time. You have time.
Okay.
About 15 more minutes. Yeah.
So I want to, you asked me to read a poem or two or three. So I think I'm going to read one poem.
Okay.
Because I know you agree with me on this one when we talk about, you know, and I think just the beauty in these photographs, the beauty in the stories you've been telling about, you know, you should find a way to chronicle the stories that go with these photographs.
Yes.
And in the next iteration of your next book, you should yourself write the stories on the backs of or on the other page. I think it would be good.
I need to journal all this stuff so that I don't forget the details.
Yes. So this is this poem is called Tsunami Rising, and there's never been a more beautiful illustration of this black women, black fight, black fierceness coming, you know, rising like a tsunami in this this notion of struggle and progress. So I read this one for you. I read it for your images. I read it for the women, the Black women in the listening audience tonight. I read it for the Black women who came before us and the ones who are to come still, the ones you gave us little glimpse of, these under 25, filled with all of the energy and fight that we need to get through the next generation and pass on to the next generation. So this one, Tsunami Rising, Me Too. In the balance of human biology, all bodies are created equal. Everybody is about 70% water, regardless of race, religion, gender, sex, or sexual orientation. We all die after about 7 days without drink. But the idiots obsessed with category have decided that a double X chromosome designates me subordinate to those with an X and a Y. Intersect those two X's with the fact of my blackness, and my existence is suddenly coded as dangerous, hostile, a direct threat to the endurance of the white patriarchy. And everybody knows that white men have spent centuries appropriating what they wanted. The gold they found in Africa wasn't enough, so they packed human bodies head to toe, submerged in a swamp of urine and feces. They dragged us across violent waters, many of us drowned or young, rather than let them live at the mercy of white men and their sons and their grandsons and their grandsons' sons. Just to keep breathing, some of us became one-dimensional in the public imagination, in books, in real life. We became one thing or the other, spinster or mother, victim or virgin, damsel or whore. Some of us went underground, some of us slipping away. Others revolted, took up arms, crawled through sewage, defied geography to build new lives in new cities. And that's how I find myself in Brooklyn, spending my nights reading tales of Nubians bathing naked in the Nile, Kushite queens equal to kings, all of them praying to a Black woman named Isis, the most powerful goddess among gods. And I imagine if I were Isis, if I were the most powerful goddess among gods, I might use my might to smite those motherfuckers who look at little girls with lust in their flesh. I would exact vengeance on behalf of every Black woman who has disproportionately borne the weight of racial and sexual violence, while everyone in the suffragette movement and the Black civil rights movement and the LGBT movement turned a blind eye to her swollen lips, mouthing, "Me too, someone help, me too, get him off me 2, for centuries, Black women have endured the culture of rape and racism combined. For centuries, the world has stood silent while Black women and Black girls were bullied by Black men and white women alike. For centuries, rape was only a word Black mothers spoke quietly, but every daughter knows what it means. It means lie still. It means it will pass. It means keep quiet. It means ignore those girls who scream too loudly in public. It means don't you shame this good Black family. And then one day something brilliant happened. A Black woman named Tarana Burke inspired wealthy white women to say, "Me too, too." And herein wriggles the strange rubric of America's particular brand of racism. Ironically, the viral mobility of the Me Too hashtag was only possible because a white woman with power retweeted a Black woman's words. 2 words which unleashed a wildfire of public testimony, pulling the shroud of sexual violation from the shadows and shoving it onto primetime TV. Yet 12 years after Tarana Burke's Me Too moment, Black women are still largely missing from the public dialogue about sexual assault. And we are so tired of this one-sided sisterhood. We are so tired of being disregarded. And if white feminists gave us room to speak honestly, this is the letter we would pen to you, you white feminists whose crying consistently drowns out the sound of Black woman suffering. Dear weeping white women, even as we cannot find the space to show you where or when or how we were torn open, we are only exhausted from centuries of holding you and your children. We have a hard time trusting you because you have never been able to stand by us, stand up for us, and we are so tired of explaining the genesis of our rage. If you wish to know more about why we are so angry, please Google us or read some Bell Hooks or some Brittany Cooper or any of the blogs of the bevy of Black women writers your white publisher husbands are too afraid to publish. For centuries, Black women have been carrying the weight of white fragility year after year, marching for everyone else's freedom, protesting for everyone else's privilege but ours. Well, this mad gaggle of global witches and hags are done braiding beads of silent acceptance. Simply put, in this century, Black women intend to take up more motherfucking space. Black women are crafting a collective response to centuries of being under everybody's water. We are a rising tsunami of fury come back to take back what was carried away without consent. And while we're all here being candid, I might as well confess to you that I don't give a fuck if you don't like me or my big mouth. Black like my lover's ass. It has never endeared me to the gatekeepers of white civility. My proclivity to speak the unspeakable is essentially the only defense I have against the indefensible violence of your man-made history. Inside my house, there is no shadow talk of birds and bees. We trade indecipherable metaphors for concrete words that will not confuse my daughter. I tell her, your mouth, your elbow, your hair, your arms, your legs, your vagina, your whole goddamn body belongs to nobody but you. And if you even feel a tiny bit unsafe, you open your mouth and you tell me, and I will always believe you. In a world that so regularly demonstrates how much it hates Black women, this is what we have to say to our little Black girls. And yet, Black women continue to survive. We continue to thrive. We continue to arrive into adulthood with the ability to laugh and love and wear hoop earrings and tight skirts and found social movements to liberate other motherfuckers from bondage. If any of this sounds like I'm speaking your story, this poem is for you, my love. If ever you have ever had to argue that you are no less deserving than your white counterpart, I am speaking to you and for you, my love. If you, the rest of y'all, if you have ever been inspired by the magic of a Black woman with thighs and ass that move mountains in their stride, if you have ever been told you speak too fiercely from the thick lip of your own truth, if you have ever been called girl like it was an insult, if you have ever been called bitch, you step forward now. If you are itching to light a fire in the fucking bonfire, a house of white patriarchy, you come stand with us Black women now. If you want to be free like Harriet Tubman, weapon in hand, wading through unfriendly waters, her power compelling the free freedom of even those who did not want to be free. If you desire to be confrontational like Sojourner, if you wish to be audacious like Audrey, antagonistic like Angela, gangster like Winnie Mandela, angry like Assata Shakur, you come, you roar with us at these rallies, you sit beside us in schools, you sing with us in church, stand with us where it matters, vote with us, vote for us at these polls, travel with us in the virtual, in the flesh, over these waters they have used against women as weapons, across the lands of this rock we all call home. Let us use fire to crack open the ground wide with an uprising that will never again die down. Let us say to them, no more water, we will use fire next time. No more water, fire next time. No more water, we go use fire next time.
Yes.
So I mean,
Love
you know,
it.
those images, like, so, like, it's, you know, I think we could do just a rolling, video of those images with this poem, because it is so much like, these images so speak to the presence of Black women in this movement, and the necessity of, our allies to make space for us to step aside, to be quiet, to bring water to these rallies and hand them to us, but give us the fucking mic.
Yes.
And when the stories are being told, and when the New York Times articles are being written, and when, the praises are being sung, like, we don't want to hear about the people who published Amanda Gorman. We want to hear about Amanda Gorman.
Yes.
We don't want to hear who put her on. We don't want to hear praise for Biden or Jill Biden, who did all of this stuff to make space for her. We don't want that. We want to speak with our own tongue. Stop cutting our tongue out and playing translator for us. Give us the fucking mic.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. All of that. And I mean, thank you, my friends. I love that. I love that poem. And like you said, the images and the poem just go so well together. So that was a blessing. Thank you.
I don't know if we have time for, are we taking questions from the audience? Adreinne, thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this. In this time when we are not really being out there in the world, these moments when we can connect, and when we can reminisce, and when we can make room for stories about how life is outside of this COVID reality, and how it is that life can still continue even in the context of COVID. I'm very grateful for your work, and for these images that have forced me to look again at a thing that sometimes you forget. I'm in Jamaica now. My kid is homeschooling from here, and sometimes you can forget. Sometimes when you're in a kind of bubble of your own, you forget that all these things that are happening, and the kind of carnal beauty of life, even when it is difficult. And your photographs certainly remind me that there is beauty in resistance, even in the most granite act of struggle, that there is joy, and there is beauty, and there is flesh, and there is sisterhood, and there is, life, and yes. We're still breathing. Even as they try to take our breath, we're still breathing.
We're breathing, we're creating, we're thriving, in spite of it all. And so I thank you, my friend, because, your words are brilliant. And, as you contributed to my book. And I feel like, I'm privileged to be able to have a friend so talented as you, be able to just call up and say, hey, can you contribute to my book? And you said,
the love is so mutual. My agent, my literary agent who died last year, Frances Golden, used to always say to me, she used to say, I love you. And I say, I love you too. And she goes, good, because unrequited love is hard.
Absolutely. So it's nice to have that mutual love.
I Yes, this was amazing conversation. Thanks so much to you both. There's lots of love in the chat for the conversation. Lovely poems, lovely photographs. When I look at them, even though, these women in these photographs are fighting, fighting for their freedoms, I get so much affirmation from them, seeing them. And I think it's because they, their voice, I can tell that their voice is getting out there, just like both your voices in the images and in your poetry are out there. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Shauna. And thank you to the San Francisco Public Library for making this happen.
Thank you to all the people who made this, because I'm not an organizer, you know what I mean? I'm essentially like the person who takes these voices in my head and these pieces of feelings that I have and bellow them from somewhere. So I'm deeply grateful for the people who make Zoom links and remind us of meetings and gather our bios and remind us that things are to be done in a certain manner in order to get them done. And, it's just amazing to have people who know what they're doing, who can put something together. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And this conversation will be on our YouTube channel, and please check out Adreinne Waheed's book at the library or from her website. It's in the chat. And I have Stacy's book on my phone, but that's also available at Haymarket and through the library's website. Oh, there it is. Yes.
I want to say real quick that, my book is sold out on Amazon. I have a reserved select amount of copies that I can sign personally for anyone who orders it from my website, blackjoyandresistance.com. So.
And if you say you support Black women, buy this book, this book that has images of Black women from all over the world. I'm so tired of people telling me they're going to give me, the way everybody's tired of prayers for the violence against Black bodies. If you're going to give me prayers, for every moment that you pray, you got to give me more. It can't just be I don't want no more prayers with nothing else. I want prayers and money, prayers and support, prayers and a house, prayers and some clothes from a child. Jesus have mercy. Stop sending only prayers. Prayers by themselves is only insulting, and it made me upset. Buy a book. Put your money where you say your fucking politics lie.
Oh, there you go.
There you have it. Buy their books. Thank you again. And
thank you, everyone.
Here's peace and love.
Peace and love, everyone.
Thank you.